man walks into therapy feeling broken, not because of one dramatic trauma, but because life just doesn't make sense anymore. His career is okay, his relationships are functional, and yet he feels fragmented, untethered, like all the parts of his life are active but disconnected. He's not alone. All around us, we see signs of the same disconnection, personally, socially, even ecologically. We're complex, but not coherent, busy, but not bonded, free, but often floating. Hello, my name is Michael Doan-Herrick. I'm a psychotherapist and a life coach in private practice in London. Welcome to another episode of Life Telos as First Principle. In this video, I want to explore a universal pattern that shows up everywhere. It underlines the development and evolution of life itself. Recognizing it can help us begin to understand why things can seem and feel broken or coherent. It's a movement from fusion through differentiation toward integration and ultimately synergy. That's when we're aligned with Life Telos. When we aren't, we take a detour from differentiation to dissociation, fragmentation, and dysfunction, and we wind up feel broken. Don't worry, I'll explain what each of these terms mean shortly. But first, I want to ground everything I will say in your immediate experience. So I invite you to take a moment to reflect, starting with your body. Notice and feel your hands, your feet, your breath, your belly, your heart, your spine. Consider and see if you can feel how many systems are working together right now. Your circulation, digestion, nervous system, all these parts doing their jobs, working together, allowing you to be here. Now, notice your senses: sight, hearing, touch, smell, taste. Look around you. What do you hear? Can you feel the sensations of your clothes on your body? Any smells? Each of your senses gives you access to a different aspect of the world, but together they create a coherent picture of your environment and allow you to orient yourself and navigate your world. Now, take a moment to reflect on the psychological parts of yourself: your memories, beliefs, identities, moods, values, goals, and inner voices. Sometimes they work together smoothly. Sometimes they conflict. But they're all part of you. On a good day, they play together nicely. Now, widen the lens to your relationships, your family, friends, coworkers, your community. These are all parts of the social fabric you belong to. You have a role in each of these relationships and social groups. Some relationships feel connected and collaborative, and some don't. Some may be conflicted or adversarial. And in some groups, you may feel like a connected member, and in others like an outsider. Now, wider still, the society you live in, the culture you navigate, the ecosystems that sustain your life, and finally, the global human family and the planetary systems that we all share. Each of these levels is made up of parts, and each can function in harmony or fall into fragmentation and disarray. And each of these dimensions of your experience interact with the others, from your heart and spine all the way to the whole planet. Everything is connected. Take a moment to imagine and feel that. Hopefully, this gives you a direct experience of what I'll be talking about. There's a pattern in it that reveals the deep structure of how life develops biologically, psychologically, socially, and culturally. But crucially, it also reveals what happens when that process breaks down. Instead of integration yielding synergy, a failure of integration results in dissociation, fragmentation, regression, and dysfunction. Understanding this arc and its fork in the road may help us understand where we are now as individuals and as a culture, and what we may need to do next. More importantly, it can help us orient our lives and systems toward what life requires for survival, coherence, connection, generativity. what I've been calling Life Telos. Now, I'll describe the terms I used earlier. I see them as the core developmental pattern: fusion to differentiation to integration to synergy. And I'm saying that the core process of development starts in fusion, and then moves to differentiation into parts. Then life integrates these parts into new emergent wholes with new capacities, which are the synergistic fruit of the integration. On the other hand, if differentiation is not followed by integration and synergy, the parts become dissociated from each other. They don't form a new emergent whole, and neither do they integrate with the larger whole that they're a part of. This pattern is everywhere that life unfolds. Biologically, life begins in undifferentiated cells, then specializes, integrates, and eventually produces an organism with emergent capacities. Psychologically, infants begin fused with caregivers, differentiate into autonomous selves, and either reintegrate into mature relational wholeness or become fragmented. Socially, early cultures are tightly fused, less differentiated, tribal and mythic, then increasingly differentiated roles, worldviews, and subsystems which either integrate or into pluralistic coherence or devolve into division. Ecologically, systems either move toward integration of species and resources or toward collapse. At each level, the pattern holds. In fusion, there's oneness without distinction. For example, a zygote, an infant-mother dyad, a tribal mythos. In differentiation, parts emerge with specific boundaries and roles. Cells specialize, unique identities form, roles diversify. In integration, parts become coordinated, mutually regulating, and oriented toward a larger shared whole. And in synergy, a new whole emerges with capacities that exceed the sum of its parts. So far, so good. But here lies the fork in the road. When integration fails, we either regress to fusion or more likely fall into dissociation. The parts don't communicate, connect, collaborate. The result is not wholeness, but breakdown, disconnection, conflict, regression, loss of function, and an inability to integrate with the larger systems we are part of. So what happens when parts are dissociated from each other? Biologically, failed integration leads to disease. Cancer is a failure of cellular cooperation. Autoimmune disorders reflect misrecognition within the system. Psychologically, trauma or neglect prevents the integration of affect, memory, and identity, leading to fragmentation, reactivity, or numbness. Socially, unintegrated difference leads to tribalism, polarization, and a loss of shared values and norms. Environmentally, unintegrated exploitation leads to ecosystem collapse. Without integration, differentiation becomes unstable. Complexity without coherence produces brittleness, not resilience. Freedom without function drifts into chaos and despair. Synergy, the fruit of alignment. When integration succeeds, something beautiful and miraculous happens. Synergy. It's not just harmony, it's emergence. It means that the coordinated system develops properties, capacities, and intelligence that none of the parts possess on their own. Biologically integrated organ systems support consciousness, mobility, and immune intelligence. Psychologically, integrated individuals develop self-regulation, creativity, autonomy, and relational depth. Socially, diverse communities that share purpose and coherence establish stability, generate innovation, resilience, and a sense of belonging for their members. Ecologically, systems that balance interdependence and renewal become regenerative and adaptive. This is the underlying structure, process, and purpose of life, or again, what I'm calling Life Telos. Here's some more concrete examples of alignment with and misalignment with Life Telos. Biologically, alignment. A healthy and fit body with a brain that integrates billions of neurons to support perception, thought, memory, and emotions, and motivates life-sustaining behavior. Misalignment, an unhealthy and/or unfit body, a severed, or for instance, a severed spinal cord where parts are still alive but no longer coordinated. Psychologically, alignment, a trauma survivor who learns to integrate painful memories, emotions, and self-states into a coherent sense of self. Misalignment, a person with untreated PTSD who dissociates, lashes out, or numbs through addiction. Socially, alignment, a diverse team with clear roles, mutual respect, and a shared vision. Misalignment, a polarized nation where mutual distrust breaks down the possibility of cooperation. And environmentally, alignment, a sustainable agricultural system that integrates local knowledge, biodiversity, and ecological feedback loops. Misalignment, industrial monoculture that depletes soil and leads to collapse. A slight tangent here. For those of you who have followed my series on questioning woke psychotherapy and my critique of critical social justice activism, I want to point out a connection between what I'm saying in this video and what I have explored elsewhere. Embracing diversity is a good and necessary part of differentiation, but trying to accomplish it by dismantling the shared cultural matrix that holds a society together does not lead to integration, it leads to dissociation. Without a common framework, diverse groups cannot coordinate, communicate, or contribute to a larger whole. What results is not synergy, but fragmentation. For example, in some circles, it's even considered unreasonable or unjust to expect immigrants to integrate into the host culture. This stance is often taken as a moral principle, but it overlooks the developmental and systemic reality that without integration, there can be no coherence or synergy. Failing to support integration on the part of both newcomers and the culture receiving them is not an act of inclusion. It's a failure to build a working whole that you could even be included in. Integration is not automatic. It requires the following: a shared purpose that parts can align with, or telos. Communication and feedback loops between parts and the whole. Mutual regulation, not just self-expression. Life Telos provides this orientation. It answers, what are we here for? What does life require of us? When systems orient around life's needs, survival, bonding, generativity, regulation, they tend toward integration. And from integration, synergy becomes possible. Our modern world is rich in differentiation, identities, technologies, freedoms, but it's poor in integration. And so we face a fork. Will we move toward reintegration and cultural synergy, or fall into dissociation, fragmentation, and decline? Traditional cultures often offered a sense of cohesion and belonging, roles, rituals, rhythm, shared purpose, but they tended to be less differentiated. We often envy and admire them for good reason. They weren't dissociated from their bodies like we are. They were deeply connected to nature, unlike us. They held together in tight kinship and communal bonds based on shared sacred stories and beliefs. They were highly integrated, but not very differentiated. Romantics have believed that we need to go back to that way of life. They were more integrated. But few would be willing to give up the freedom to express and enact their own sense of selfhood. I'm not advocating going back. I'm advocating for an integration of the differentiations we have managed to create. Modernity brought an explosion of differentiation, choice, autonomy, abstractions. But without integration, we're unmoored. This is not a call to regress. It's a call to transcend and include, to preserve the gains of differentiation while recovering orientation and integration. So let's return to where we began, with your body, your senses, your inner world, and ask yourself, are the parts of me working together? Do I feel connected to my body? Is there coherence between my thoughts, feelings, actions, and relationships? Where do I sense synergy, and where do I feel fragmentation? Then expand the lens again in your social world. Are your roles and relationships integrated or pulling you apart? In your participation in culture and your relationship with nature, with the global human family, do you feel a part of a greater whole or adrift in disconnection? This is not a call to become perfect or flawlessly unified and integrated. Each of us will have a different configuration of alignment and dissociation across these domains. What we share is the same pattern of fusion, differentiation, integration to synergy, or, when integration fails, dissociation to dysfunction. So, I invite you to make this more than a theory. Use it as a lens. Use it as a compass. Notice where integration and synergy are happening in your life and nurture it. Notice where dissociation is setting in and ask what is needed to reconnect with your body, with yourself, and with others. A mature system is not one that avoids complexity, but one that integrates it. A mature person is not one who avoids conflict or emotion, but one who integrates them into a coherent life. A mature culture is not one that flattens difference, but one that aligns it around a shared participation in life. This is the work before us, in our bodies, our minds, our relationships, our societies, and the non-human life that makes up our world. Let's choose the path of alignment. Let's cultivate the conditions for synergy. Let's serve the directionality of life. You don't have to sing Kumbaya, but if you think it will help, sing your heart out. Thanks for joining me and staying until the end. As I always say at this point, take care of yourself and each other. Hopefully this video has given you further ways to think about and do this. Until next time, bye for now.